So the way that we assign costs to a case is through the dockets. So by adding cost dockets, is what we call them, by adding cost dockets to the case, we assign fines and fees to them. So let's go ahead and go into a case and see that. So going into case management, functions, case initiation, and then searching for your case. Here I have a test case in our test court, so I can do as I please. Okay, so what we're going to go ahead and do is open up the case that we want to assign some fees, some fines and fees to it. We go to the main screen for that case, and what we want to do is head over to the docket entries. First thing it's going to tell you is if you don't have any dockets, it's going to let you know that there's no records found for the search criteria, which is correct because we don't have any dockets right now. So what we want to do is on the left-hand side, most screens in CoreView can be comprised of Dynalinks, and that's what these are over here. So throughout the videos, you'll hear us say third Dynalink, second Dynalink, and that's what we're referring to are the links on the left-hand side of the screens. So once we're in the docket list screen, and the screen names are located at the top left-hand corner. So once we're in the docket list screen, we're going to go ahead and go to the first Dynalink, which is the add record. This is going to bring up the docket entry creation screen. Here, we can go ahead and start adding our dockets. If you don't have the docket code ready to go, then what you can go ahead and do is click on this little gray box. But if you already have those docket codes, you can simply enter those docket codes into this field here and tap off, and it'll automatically populate with that docket that you're looking for. So let's go ahead and just hit the gray box. And here we're going to get a bunch of cost dockets. So there's two different types of cost dockets when it comes to the amount. Some dockets you're going to see they're going to be a fixed amount, and they'll have some type of already default amount assigned to them. If we scroll down a little bit more, we're going to see a different type of docket, which we call a zero cost docket. The zero cost docket are essentially that. You'll see them and they'll have zeros with their amount due. We call them zero cost dockets because sometimes, so if you look at the description, this docket could be anywhere from $5 to $49.99. So the judge can assign some type of amount onto a case, and if it's $30, then it'd be this NRS fine docket, and we would be able to enter in $30 for how much that docket is going to be outstanding. So let's go ahead and throw one of the fixed cost dockets onto the case. So let's go ahead and do this $75 ones. We're just going to arbitrarily pick one here. So you highlight it, hit select, you're going to get brought back to this docket entry creation screen. What you're going to go ahead and see is that it's going to come in with the description of the docket. Below that, it's going to come in, it's going to show this party charge link. What it does is it links this docket, this cost docket, or this cost to a charge on the case. Currently, we only have one charge on the case, but if you were to have multiple charges, you would be able to highlight, delete, and change which charge number you want this docket to be linked to. And then just right above that, you're going to have the file date. This can be backdated. So if you guys were correcting some dockets or something like that and needed to rethrow an AA docket, and those dockets were originally supposed to be on the case back in March, you can backdate this to that date. But it is going to default to today's date. So we're going to go ahead and leave it as 5/17/2019. On the right hand side, you'll see that the amount due for this docket is $75, which is correct. As you can tell, I'm hitting backspace, highlighting and backspacing, and I'm not able to change that amount. That's what we mean by the fixed amount. Below, we're going to see how much of the docket has been dismissed or credited, which right now, since we're creating the docket, nothing has been dismissed or credited, and then nothing has been paid on it, so those amounts are going to be zero. Below here, you have the option of adding additional comments. We're going to go ahead and just put AA AA comment. One thing that you'll hear me say throughout the finance videos is adding comments. It's a little, sometimes it feels a little redundant to keep adding comments, but they really do come in handy when when something may go wrong or some totals don't match up and it goes back to a case that you did 3 months ago. And in 3 months, you're going to be processing quite a few cases. So to remember exactly what happened 3 months ago on a specific case, it's a little hard. So to have those comments and have that audit trail is always going to be beneficial for the court, always. And especially if you guys are getting audited and somehow this case gets pulled out, you have your comments and your audit trail to be able to explain why things were done in a certain way. So again, comments are very important, especially with financials. Okay, so we went ahead and added our just AA comment. We're going to go ahead and hit save. And now we get a docket record for the docket list. Going from left to right, we're going to see the docket date, which is 5/17. That was that file date. And then we're going to see the description of the docket, and then we're going to see a little bit of our comment. Keep in mind that if you have a very long comment, it's not going to show the entire comment here, so it's not going to bring it down all the way and show all of it. It will cut it off. But that's not to say that the whole comment didn't get saved. You just have to reopen it to view the rest of the comment. On the right-hand side, we kind of have a little legend up here that tells you what's going on. First one up top is going to be how much the docket is owed, which is $75. Below here, this line would be for if there was a dismissal for that docket, if some amount or the whole amount was dismissed. And on the right-hand side, we have the amount due. The amount due is going to be comprised of how much is actually owed minus the dismissal. So this amount up top here, once you start receipting to those dockets and we start seeing like $10 get added to this specific docket, it won't show 75 anymore, it'll show 65, and then it'll just get minused by the amount dismissed. So let's go ahead and look at one of those zero cost dockets that we were talking about earlier. So we're going to go ahead and do an add record one more time, and a very popular docket that most courts are going to be using. And actually, let's go ahead and do that NRS first. Let's just scroll down a little bit. There we go. We'll go ahead and do this we'll do something a little bit more. So we'll do this one right here for the 400 to 499. This guy's in huge trouble for speeding in a school zone. Huge trouble. The judge wasn't having it. So there we go. So we get the date filled. So let's go ahead and backdate it just so that I can show you guys that you guys can do that. So you put it in the format of a date, tab off, and it'll populate for yesterday. Today's the 17th. Gives us the description, and then it lets us know what docket it's being linked to. Not every single cost docket is going to be linked to a charge. Some of them, like a bench warrant fee, when a bench warrant is issued, it's not necessarily on a single charge, it's on the whole case. So for those type of dockets, you're not going to see this field here. Right-hand side, we saw that $75 was grayed out. We weren't able to change that. Well, with a zero cost docket, we have the ability to override that zero and put in some type of amount we want. Another thing to be aware of is that we are able to put any amount we want. That does include any amount less than 400 or more than 499.99. So let's go ahead and just do 400 over here. You can go ahead and tab off, put in some comments if you want to. That's fine, comment. Once we have all the information correct, we know that's the correct amount, 400. We're going to go ahead and hit save. And there we go, same thing. So we're going to see those amounts right there. So one more time, there's two types of cost dockets. One is a zero cost docket, which allows us to override how much the docket is going to be due. And we have the fixed amounts, which we are set up to not be overridden, and it's a fixed amount. We cannot change that. Another docket that I want to go ahead and talk about that you guys will be using frequently are those it's called a holding docket. And what the holding docket does is it basically takes the money once it's been receipted to, and it holds that money until the court or some manual process comes into play and moves that money. When we look at these dockets or any docket, any type of, in the background, cost dockets are comprised of smaller accounts. When those dockets are receipted against these cases, we are actually paying towards these dockets, and that money is being applied to the dockets, and then that dockets has the accounts associated in the background. That's where the money is being held until the court does their end of month processing. Their end of month process takes the money that is currently sitting in those disbursement accounts and then combines them into an end of month check, which will go to the county or a treasurer or a controller's office, wherever your process dictates, that's where it's going to go to. So once more again, dockets are comprised of smaller accounts. Once we receipt to those dockets, the money sits in those disbursement accounts. And then at the end of the month, that money in the disbursement accounts is pulled, put into an end of month check and sent off. Well, like I said earlier, the holding accounts are a little different in that at the end of the month, it doesn't pull any money out of the holding accounts. It takes a manual process to move money sitting in a holding account. And a little later in the videos, probably the second one, we'll talk about checks and refunds, and we'll be able to see how we can pull that money and refund it, or we can transfer that money or use it to pay off fines and fees. We'll definitely take a look into that. That's just kind of a brief overview of what a holding docket does. So let's go ahead and throw one. So one of the more popular holding dockets that the court uses is the cash bill posted docket. And like I said earlier as well, if you do have the docket code, you can just go ahead and enter it in here. So we'll just do that CBP, which stands for the cash bill posted, tab off that, and it'll auto-populate with the docket's information. So as you see here below that charge, the charge link did not appear, so we can't link this docket to any type of charge. It's towards the case. Right hand side, we see zeros, so we now know that that is a zero cost docket. Let's go ahead and do $1,000 for this case here. So we'll do 1,000, tab off of that. We'll just woohoo comments, and then we'll just hit save. Okay. So there we go. We have now we have the zero cost docket, a fixed, and a holding docket. So now we've assigned some fines and fees to a case. Now we have money outstanding on it. So we have money that's been assigned to the case, but what if we accidentally added some cost docket to a case that shouldn't have been there? Let's say this cash bill posted should have not been thrown on this case. It should have been thrown on another one. We have two ways of removing or adjusting cost dockets on a case. The first one is that we can go ahead and simply delete that cost docket. There is a little caveat to deleting cost dockets. If a cost docket has been receipted against, we cannot delete the docket. So bear that in mind. If it's been receipted against, we can't delete it. Once you receipt to things, you'll see that there will be comments added to these dockets here saying which receipt has been applied to this docket. But if no docket has been receipted, if there hasn't been a receipt that's been receipted against on these dockets, then you're more than welcome to delete them if that's what your court process dictates as well. So I would get with your judge or your court administrator and verify that deleting a cost docket is okay, because I know that there are some courts that like to dismiss the costs and they do not like to delete them. So it's dependent on what your court does. So let's go ahead and just delete this one here. I'm going to go ahead and do let's go ahead and delete it. So I'm going to highlight the docket that we want to delete. We verified that there's no receipts against this docket, and we're just going to go ahead and hit that second Dynalink delete record. It's going to give us a message prompt letting us know, do we really want to delete this record? We're going to say, oh yeah, and give it a second. It's gone. Okay. So another way, like I said, so what if in an event where you have a docket that shouldn't have been on the case and it was accidentally receipted against? How do we remove those unassigned those costs those fines and fees to the case. Well, we know that it's been received again, so we can't delete the docket. The next best thing that we can do is go ahead and just simply dismiss the costs. So you're going to highlight the docket that you want. Let's say this NRS fee was supposed to be actually for $200 as opposed to $400. So we're going to go ahead and open up. So you're going to select the docket that you want. You're going to go ahead and open that up. And what we're going to go ahead and do is go to the third dynamic link on the left to dismiss costs. Okay, we're not going to change the docket. We know it's the 400 through 499.99 cents, but for the sake of clarity and not taking too much time, we're just going to go ahead and modify this one. So we're in the dismiss cost selection screen for the docket NRS fine 400 through 499.99 cents. We want to go ahead and dismiss that so that the docket is owing $200 overall. So we're going to go ahead and do an add record. The accounts receivable cost dismissal screen will pop up. It'll list the case number, the party information, and then the docket entry. Here we have our fine comment. The date typically will be today. It'll default to today's date. It can be backdated if necessary. The dismissal type, your court's going to have a lot more dismissal types than what you see here. We don't have very many just because this is a test court and a test environment, so we were a little limited on that. But let's just go ahead and say that the defendant did 20 hours of community service, and so the judge went ahead and dismissed $200 of this docket. So remember, it could either dismissals can be used for unassigning case or just dismissing the costs for any type of user error. That's another dismissal type that you guys will have is user error. You guys can use that one, or community service, jail time. Those are just a couple reasons why you would dismiss some costs on a docket. So we're going to go ahead and put $200 here. Once we tab off, this next screen that gets highlighted, that's how much the docket is now outstanding. New docket amount, $200. If we were to put $150 here, tab off, the new docket amount would then be $250. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and back and say that it was $200 that the judge dismissed in lieu of community service. So again, we're going to go ahead and put comments. So completed 20 hours of community service. Judge dismissed 200. It's a pretty sweet deal. $200. Okay, so we can go ahead and hit save. So now we're going to go ahead and see a new record that's been added here. We're going to have a date, the dismissal type, and then how much was actually dismissed. Up top, this case unpaid, that's going to tell you how much is actually due on this docket still. Below here, it's going to total up the dismissal records. With that being said, you can have multiple dismissal records on a case. So let's go ahead and say that, you know, the guy went ahead and did 5 more hours of community service. So the judge is going to knock off another $50. So we're going to go ahead and go to the first dynamic link, add record. We're going to go ahead and do community service one more time. Set $50. And I'm just going to go ahead and put test here. So we'll hit save. So now we're going to see 2 dismissal records here, each of them totaling up to $250. And now we have $150 left outstanding for this specific docket. Let's say that the defendant actually didn't have the paperwork stating that he completed 5 hours of community service. And so, now he actually doesn't get the $50 dismissed. So how do we adjust that? Well, you highlight the one that you want to adjust or reverse out. And to the left, you'll see that adjust. What it's going to do is it's going to reverse out that dismissal record. So we'll go ahead and hit adjust. It's going to tell us that it's going to reverse the dismissed cost. We'll say yep. And what it's going to do is it's going to create another dismissal record, but with a negative amount of 50. So it's going to essentially reverse out the dismissal record that you wanted to adjust. So now we'll see 200 and 200 up top here, how much it's due, 200 for how much the dismissals have totaled up to. Okay, let's go ahead and hit close. So that's all been taken care of. Here on the right-hand side, we'll see that 200 is in the amount dismissed and credited. If we go and hit save, you will now see that right below the amount owed, there's going to be a $200 line item here for the amount dismissed or credited, and then the amount due is now $200. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that cash bill refund docket or cash bill posted docket. That's going to help us a little bit in the future for the transfer funds. So I'm going to go ahead and add $500. Actually, got $300. So go ahead and save. Okay, so now we have all those. So there's another section in CourtView that allows you to look at the summary, the financial summary for a case. So right now, currently, we're in the docket list. So if we hit close and it heads us back into the main screen for the case, on the left-hand side, the 6th dynalink, that one is going to be called our costs dynalink. By clicking on that, it's going to bring us to the financial case summary, and that's exactly what it does. It gives us a summary of the financials on the case. Up top, we're going to be looking at the docket application. Here, we're going to see that everything is going to be broken up and grouped together by what docket application they are. This means that all AA fees on a case are going to be grouped up. So your genetic marker, just your normal AA fees, those are all administrative assessment fees. Those are going to be grouped together when you have more than one docket on it. Your fines are going to be grouped together, so that's why it's grouping them all together as you see. So each column is we're gonna have the docket application. It's not gonna say it's not gonna show the docket description, but what application it is. So we know that this is the AA fee, this is the NRS fine here. To the right, we're gonna see the owed column, which shows how much is actually owed on that docket. It's how much it was initially assigned for. So although we have made some dismissals, and deleted some dockets, it's just going to show how much it initially was saved for or added for. So 75 for the AA fee, 400 for the fine. Nothing's been paid in that column, so it's going to show zeros. We dismissed $200 for the fine because of in lieu of community service, and then we have due. The AA docket is still due, still owed $75. The fine is owed $200. And that's going to be totaling $275. So over here on this little bottom line, bottom row, we're going to see the total fees. So we have $475, zero's been paid so far, $200 in total has been dismissed, and then we owe $275. The holding application, that's once again just that holding account. These are all the holding dockets. So the cash bill deposit, $300 was owed on it, zero has been paid, zero has been credited, so $300 is due. That's going to be true for this total holding line as well. And then once we start doing a little bit of receipting, we'll head back into here and I'll explain what this holding account does.